We're going to start the meeting with an interesting rendition this time. I picked something that is a little different. I hope you're not going to kill me over it, but I like it. So let's see how it works.
No, he told me not to have it on. It's too much.
By the way, it would be a good time for everybody to go on mute, so you don't inadvertently talk and everybody hears what you're saying. After the anthem, Caroline will start the meeting with her introduction. And then Anne is going to introduce our speaker of the day, and that is Linda Murphy. She's going to give us an exciting talk about hiking home for shelter in 2019. We're going to have a little bit of an update for membership renewal. That is coming up, just some key items, because it's going to be a little different to what it used to be. And at the end of the meeting, we're going to do what we had previously. We just split into smaller groups, which makes it a whole lot easier to just have a nice little chat and talk about whatever we like to talk about. With that, let's get started with the anthem. Yeah, I hope you didn't mind. I thought that was quite well done. With that, if I may hand over to you, Caroline, to introduce the meeting for us.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us for our 5th Zoom meeting since last March. We have enjoyed our speakers, Erica Angus from Theatre Collingwood in May, Tim Burrows from the Electric Car Society in June, Dr. Robert Galway comparing the pandemic of 1918 to COVID-19 in September, and Noreen Barron, founder of the local Grandmothers to Grandmothers group, which is a part of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, in October. All of our talks have been most interesting and informative. And today we welcome our 5th speaker, Linda Murphy, whose topic will be no less captivating, I'm sure, with her experiences of hiking and raising funds for a most deserving foundation. I would like to thank Anne Parsons for organizing all of these wonderful speakers over the past 5 months for our enjoyment. And for your information, these meetings are now being recorded, and you can watch them again if you wish at your leisure. You have to go to our website, or you can view them online for September, October speakers, and also for this month's speaker. We are taking a break for the month of December, so I will take this opportunity to wish you all a safe and happy holiday season until we meet again in January.
Thank you, Caroline. If I may ask Anne now to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon, Provost members. Glad you could all Zoom in today. Our speaker today is Linda Murphy. Linda will be speaking on her hike from Mexico to Canada, raising over $32,000 for My Friend's House shelter in Collingwood. Linda is a resident of Nottawa and has encompassed a career of teaching high school drama, corporate communications, and is now a realtor with Royal LePage. Linda volunteers at the Georgian Bay Association of Realtors, Collingwood Hospital, and the Trinity United Church, Craigley Ski Club, and she also acts in the Gaslight Theatre, an annual production in Collingwood. Her love of hiking brings us up to our presentation today, Hiking Home for Shelter 2019. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate the invitation to present for your group today. And so we should just get started, right, at this point? Okay.
Very good, yes.
Okay, so here we go. If I could have a time check at, say, 15 minutes, please, from Martin or Anne, or somebody just wave me down. Because even though there is a clock on my computer, I could just easily plow right through whatever my time limit is. Just the first 15 minutes, and then I'll wrap it up. And I'll wrap up the presentation part. Then I'll be showing you a video that shows a general overview of the entire hike. And after that, we'll have probably another 15, 20 minutes left for question and answers. Sound good?
Check it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay. And hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And thank you to everybody for checking that your little microphone is red and has a stroke through it right now, because I think we might have a couple people still on. So make sure you mute yourself, or we can ask the meeting host to mute themselves, or mute the people who aren't muted so we don't hear you if you cough or sneeze. So here we go. There is a gentleman by the name of, or was a gentleman in the 19th century. His name was John Muir, and you may have heard of the John Muir Trail. He's known as the father of national parks in the US. He was a Scottish immigrant, and a little known detail is that he spent time living in this area, right in Grey County. And there in fact is a John Muir lookout along the Bruce Trail. And I bet Barb Reynolds knows where it is if you ask her. Well, John Muir is quoted to have said, "The mountains are calling, and so I must go." Well, all my life, I did hear the mountains calling me. Some people are drawn to the ocean. Some people are drawn to the woods. Some people are drawn to different retreats that feed their soul. And I always felt, even though I grew up in Scarborough, go figure, I was called by the mountains. And eventually I knew I would answer that call. And I did travel to the mountains as a university student, but eventually I knew I wanted to spend some serious time exploring them. So I heard that call all my life, and I finally answered it with a complete passion and vengeance in 2019 when I ventured out to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. Now I'm going to go through the inspiration for it, how I got started on it, and all about the fundraising, and then I'll get into telling some stories from my trek. So let me, do I need to share my screen now, Martin? Is that what we need to do for me to show my slides? I think so.
Yeah, you can do that. You're a co-host.
Okay.
And please remember to toggle the little box that says sound on in the bottom left of that share screen.
Okay, gonna share it.
Because there you go.
And now you should be able to see now a picture of the book, Wild, is that correct?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, wonderful. So this is a book that was written by a woman named Cheryl Strayed, who hiked the PCT, one of the first women to hike it, not as far back as you may think, in 1990. Now, Cheryl was 22 years old when she did that hike. I was 57 when I started. And her story, when I saw the movie first and then read this book, totally inspired me. As soon as I heard of this woman hiking from the border of Mexico to the border of Canada, and she didn't actually make it, she only did about a third of the trail. I did almost all the trail with the exception of the High Sierras, which was blocked with 52, yes, you heard right, 52 feet of snow that summer, and just couldn't get past. I had to skip over that part. Now I need to go to the next slide, but I need to get rid of you guys. Minimize. How do I, there we go. So here is a map of the Pacific Crest Trail, which is also behind me, leaning up against the wall. I have a poster of it. It starts down here at the Mexican border, and you walk and walk and walk and walk and walk through California, and then through Oregon, and then through Washington, and then you literally walk home into Canada. As I started to do my research, preparing for this, what's called a through hike, an end-to-end through hike, meaning continuously without any leaving and coming back to it later. The days off are strictly for rest or recuperation or injuries and resupplying, and then you get back onto the trail. I realized this was a mammoth task, And I thought, I don't know if I can do it just based on my passion, certainly not based on my fitness level, because I'm not known as an athlete. I am known as an outdoor adventurer, a camper, a hiker, somebody who likes to be active, but that describes almost everybody who lives in Southern Georgian Bay. But so I thought, I need a purpose bigger than myself to know that I'm going to be successful at this. And so I approached Julie LeBlanc, who is part of the fundraising staff at my friend's house, and said, I'd like to make this a fundraising hike for my friend's house. Can you help me? And yeah, she was very helpful. And given that also Royal LePage is the only real estate corporation in Canada that has its own charitable foundation, I thought this made a really good partnership between my business and the fundraising. And I thought I could leverage my position as a successful local and on a national scale business person, where I have a huge network of connections with other realtors across Canada, to market this cause. And it turned out to be a great decision. The foundation helped me set up a website. And as you can see, the total there says, now this screenshot was grabbed not before I went on my hike, but just as I returned. The total raised there says $27,000. And in the end, I actually raised over $32,000, 90% of which went to my friend's house and 10% went to violence prevention programs, domestic violence prevention programs across Canada. I began my training and finished my training, did all my training. Where else? On the Bruce Trail. So this is a shot from a nice hiking adventure up in doing the Lions Head Loop. And yeah, I started in the summer of 2018, and this is from the fall of 2019. And my training continued on the Bruce Trail well through the winter. And that day, this picture, it was -30 with the wind chill. And I was out there for 10 hours that day. And I figured if I can do that, I can handle anything. But there were a lot of things I couldn't train for that I was met with on the PCT. I wasn't met with this kind of temperature though. That was reserved for Canadian winter hiking. Throughout the process of getting ready to go and initiating the, fundraising, there were some people who came forward and said, okay, some people are donating to the cause, but I'd like to donate to your costs because you're taking 6 months off of work. Yes, 6 months, that was the budget because that's as long as I could stay in the States. And it was reputed to take between 5 and 6 months to do the entire trail, which was over 4,000 kilometers. And some people said, well, I'd like to donate to your costs, which is a really nice thing that they did. And that started to take traction, get some traction. And as you see on this page, I started a GoFundMe account, and separate from the over $32,000 raised for the charity My Friend's House and domestic violence prevention programs, I received over $8,000 in sponsorships for things such as my tent, my clothing, my food, my accommodation, my flights. And Gerard Buckley, for example, of Mortgage Wellness here in Collingwood, sponsored my flights. He was my biggest sponsor. And so in March of 2019, this was taken on March 26th, I went to the Mexican border. There's the wall. And this is the southern terminus. And I signed the register, and with my permit, took these pictures, and I headed north for the Canadian border. So that was March 29th, and I arrived back in Canada on September 14th. 173 days later. This is a very typical shot from just a low elevation in California. It was very dry. Now this was March. I was lucky there was greenery and some water supplies. People who came after me later in the spring or early summer saw this land as parched brown and no water supplies available to them. As you can see, you have nowhere to hang your laundry but on your back. So I carried everything with me that I needed. I was out on the trail for 5 to 10 days at a time between towns and resupplies and rest. And that is because there were no towns. There were no roads to get off. If I was on the trail 7 days, that meant there was no town to be accessed for 7 days. And I carried everything I needed for that time from town to town. Okay, I'm going to close this and go back, stopping the share. And now I'm just going to talk to you. So if you are still seeing things in gallery mode, you may want to go into speaker mode, as Martin was recommending. This trek was the greatest adventure and the most difficult task of my entire life. And I've been through career changes. We've raised 3 children. We've moved several times. We've had tough times. We've had great times. This honestly was the toughest thing I've ever done. The greatest challenge. It took me 5.5 months, 173 days, 23 weeks. I went through the California desert, the forests of Oregon, but there was a heat wave, so it was hot and humid, very similar to the Bruce Trail and Ontario hiking in Oregon. And then when I got into Washington, it seemed like the mountains were only uphill all the way to the Canadian border. I learned a lot about myself, a lot about other people's kindness, a lot about the States, and wow, a lot about the American way of thinking as I encountered Americans all the way up the trail. But even though I met people, and I did eventually make a trail friend, I started out this hike as a solo hiker. Even though I eventually did make a friend, I was alone for 42 days in the wilderness. And I can honestly say that the worst part of this trek was the loneliness. I learned that we need each other. There's a reason that you're tuning in today, even though you're sitting at your desk or your table or on your couch, you're looking at a screen. We need this interaction with each other just as much as we need the air and the water and the food to survive. I learned that to my core. And if I wasn't hiking to benefit women and children who suffer from domestic violence, I know the loneliness would have sent me home probably by about the 3rd week. Oh, the 1st week, that was an adventure. Woohoo! No kids, no husband. I am out of not out of Canada, but I'm out of home and out of my comfort zone and out in the wilderness, always where I wanted to be. Yeah, that grew old in about 8 days. The 1st week, fun, holiday. The 2nd week, gee, I'd really like to share this with somebody I love, my husband, my children, a best friend maybe. By the 3rd week, I was a wreck, but I pulled it together many times over, hit the bottom many times again, and made it to the point where God did send me a wonderful friend who I hiked the rest of the way to Canada with. And that truly, if somebody asked me what the best part of my hike was, that would be it, that I made this best friend for life on the trail. I really did. And I learned so much about the generosity of human kindness from those I know who supported the trek or just supported me with kind comments that they would send and that would suddenly reach me. I'd get a signal and tap on my screen and see, oh, I got a supportive comment from someone. So that the people stories are the best part. Interesting, eh? That the lack of people was the worst part. And the kindness and generosity of people was the best part. And that was huge for me. I thought I was going to learn all this stuff about wilderness survival. That was sort of incidental. It was the people stuff that was the important thing. There were scary times. There was a time I was on a ridge where the mountain was rising up above me and plunging below me, and I was on a 1-foot ridge walking carefully, but the winds were howling, the kind of winds that close the chairlifts at Blue Mountain, where you really shouldn't be on a mountain ridge, and I thought I was going to get blown off. That was pretty scary. There were times that I had to cross raging rivers, and I mean raging, and you have to undo your pack when you cross the river in the event that you get pulled down the river, swept away, so that you can take your pack off and float and fight for your life. That was scary. And there was a time when I was visited by a mountain lion in the night. That was scary because I was alone, and it was the middle of the night, and the mountain lion's purring woke me up right by my head. And I knew that he was just sniffing around and deciding what to do with the structure of my tent. And don't forget, I'm not in a big, heavy canvas tent. I am in a whisper thin, light as a feather tent with a fly over. But I woke up to that sound, and I didn't breathe, and I didn't move. And my eyes just bugged wide, like I was instantly awake. And I just waited for it to go away. I didn't get much sleep the rest of the night that night. Another scary thing, interestingly, another scary thing is a people story. When I would hit a road, or it became my friend Carol and I would hit a road and have to get into town. There's only one way to get there. The one way you can't tell your mom about, but I guess I did tell her once I got back. But even at 58 years of age, I turned 58 on the trail, my mom didn't know I was hitchhiking, and I didn't want to worry her. But one of the scariest stories from my adventure was the day we got in with a drunk driver. And we didn't know she was drunk because we were outside and she was inside the car, and she said, yeah, sure, hop in, with her little son in the front seat. Her 12-year-old son was in the front seat. But as soon as the car moved away from where she had pulled off and the windows went up, we smelt the alcohol, and she was wavering across the line and onto the shoulder. And it was incredibly scary. Eventually, I was able to convince her that I totally lied. I said, you know, I have the same car at home, and I really miss driving. If you're tired at all, and she said, oh, I am. I convinced her to give me control of the car. She pulled over, and I was able to drive the rest of the way, which was about a 45-minute drive. So that was pretty scary. The most fun part, let's talk about some fun. The most fun part of hiking on a long distance trail, it's something called trail magic. Trail magic is when you come upon a trail angel, and we have trail angels. We have Bruce Trail Angels who support hikers who need to be driven from one location to the next to successfully complete their hike. And I have helped chauffeur hikers. And but trail magic is when trail angels bring you treats. Now, it's nice to have a chocolate bar once in a while. It's nice to have a piece of cake, and maybe even hot dogs sometimes taste great when you haven't had one in a while. But when you've been eating dried foods and you're counting your peanuts and you're eating the rehydrated oatmeal for the 10th time, and you come across a parking lot or a lookout where someone is parked with the back of their truck open and a barbecue and some hot dogs or maybe pizza or cake. That happened one time. And that is called, and it's there for you, the hikers. They just want to support the hikers. And it's called trail magic. And it's so much fun. Sometimes there's beer in a cooler or pop, and hikers stop dead in their tracks for trail magic because it's such a treat. And we call it a trail magic vortex when you get stuck there for longer than you should, and you end up losing your mileage for the day because you get stuck at trail magic vortex. I get asked what was the most beautiful part of the trail, and you saw a photo that showed a really dry, desolate area of Southern California. That in itself had beauty. It was so different to what I'm used to here in Ontario or what I'd hiked out in Alberta and BC. But there were areas that were strikingly beautiful for their difference, for their altitude, for the view, for the ruggedness. And there's a place called Crater Lake, and you're going to see a photo. My last photo in the video that you're going to see is of me with my arms up in the air. above Crater Lake. And when you see that photo, you're going to see the water, a color of blue that you think, well, come on, this has to be touched up. The answer is no, it is not. It's stunningly blue, like you've never seen before. It's called Crater Lake. There's also an area called Goat Rocks Wilderness, where the mountains are just one rugged peak after another. And you have to climb, 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 but then you get to go along all the peaks. And yeah, you're going up and down, but not all the way down into the valley. So it's not so arduous as so many of the other mountain climbs are. Northern Washington is just gorgeous. And one of my favorite things is to look out over a mountain range. And you may have seen this in paintings and photographs, or if you've hiked in a mountainous area yourself, where you're in the thick of a range and closest mountain to you is rugged, rocky, maybe snow-peaked. And then behind that mountain, maybe there's another row of mountains and it's a little blurry, but the color is still dark. And then behind there it's lighter, and behind there it's lighter. And you see these layers of blue mountains, one behind the other. And I just love that to the horizon. There were many obstacles on the trail. I was probably my worst obstacle myself, in my head, in my body. I kept getting challenged. I had a foot stress fracture that took me off the trail, supposed to be for 6 weeks. It said a foot stress fracture is the most common injury from long distance thru hikers, and it sends them home. I don't know why. Well, I do know. I think I know why, that I was meant to do this trail for the women and children I was raising funds for and awareness about. And after 10 days of rest, ice, elevation, nothing else, I went back to the trail and my stress fracture in my foot healed. I tore ligaments in my back. I actually had bruises on my lower back. I didn't fall. I reached, turned, stretched the wrong way, and I tore 3 ligaments in my back. That took me off the trail for 5 days. People are usually down and out for weeks with torn ligaments in their back. When I went back to the trail, I couldn't lift my backpack on. I was with a group of women for about a week for that time, and one of them or two of them always had to lift my pack on. I had to go to the washroom, lift my pack off. When I was done, this is so detailed and embarrassing, but I had to go, okay, I'm done. And they would come to me in the bush where I was hiding to go to the bathroom and put my pack on again. They had to put my stakes in the ground for me. That was a very painful injury. I got a tooth infection, which I did get off and get treated. I got antibiotics and it subsided, but I did actually have to have a molar pulled when I returned to Collingwood after the end of the hike. So there were some permanent changes. I have a permanent numb spot in one of my toes, my big toe, my left foot. It just doesn't seem to be coming back, but maybe it will someday. I had Giardia, which is a giardiasis is the full name, but we say Giardia. It's a parasitic stomach infection that you get from drinking groundwater. Very, very painful. And again, that does send did send some of the hikers home from their journey completely. And speaking of some of them going home, the percentage of people who make it, who plan to do a thru hike from end to end, Mexico to Canada, is 20%. That's the portion that makes it approximately every year. 50% drop out within the first month. And often it's injuries like injuries or illnesses that I've described. I was filtering my water religiously, but microorganism is a tiny thing, and all it takes is one to get through and attack your lower GI, and you're a wreck. And that took me off the trail for about another 5 days. And if you watch my videos on my YouTube channel, you can see me getting more and more sick. And all of these are described in greater detail. If you want to go to my YouTube channel, you can jot it down now. It's youtube.com/c/thehealthyhiker. That name has come to me since I've come back from hiking. So yeah, so I had a lot of obstacles that were from within my own body. Outside my body, I was met with fallen trees, many, many fallen trees that I had to climb over or under, Russian Creek crossings, incredible elevation ascents and descents. And I really suffered from altitude sickness because, well, we live at almost sea level here, and I just wasn't used to it. And you're not staying up at that high level. You're going down into lower valleys and maybe for a few days hovering around the lower level. And then you go up high again within a day. And we're talking up to, you know, from 1,000, 2,000 feet up to 10,000 feet. And so my body just didn't respond well to that. But I suffered through and made it through. In terms of the food on the trail, some people send their food ahead in supply boxes. I only did that in Washington because there were very, very few towns that were big enough to offer food resupply. We were pulling out into like a campground or a one-horse town, maybe with a little post office attached to the general store. And so that's where we sent boxes ahead. But from Southern California to the border of Oregon and Washington, I resupplied as I went along. So every 5 to 10 days, I would fill up, go to a grocery store and fill up my food bag and carry it with me. I would eat things, like I said, like oatmeal. I would eat pepperette sticks, tuna in packages in soft tortilla rolls. And I would pack out my one fresh vegetable was baby spinach in a bag, pop the bag to crush it down so it would fit in my pack well. And I'd put that baby spinach in my wraps with my tuna. I would put it in my my ramen in my pot, in my little cup pot. One cup is also your pot. It's a one-stop cooking affair and one pot cooking affair. And I would heat up almost every night. I would have a hot meal, either a rehydrated hiking prepackaged meal or ramen with spinach, maybe even tuna or hot dog. It all sounds disgusting to me now, but I would eat it again, I know, when I'm out there. What wildlife did I meet out there? I did actually see a lot of wildlife, a lot of snakes. I know people here even say they're scared of snakes on the Bruce Trail, and I'm sure not anymore because I have desensitized myself. I saw 16 snakes, 9 of which were rattlesnakes. Yep. And 2 or 3, I think, that actually rattled at me. One was coiled and ready to go, and I felt slightly threatened about that. And you'll see that in the video that's upcoming. I saw 3 bears, one of which was close enough to shoo away, and we caught that on video, yelling at a bear to go. 25 deer, 10 elk, 4 eagles, and countless lizards, and millions of mosquitoes. Oh, and lots of marmots in Washington. One of the fun things on the trail is that everybody gets a trail name, a nickname, and you have to have this bestowed upon you. You can't choose your nickname. My trail name is Diddly because I apparently am always the last one out of camp diddling. And it's amazing that I made it here on time today. I'm always usually running a little bit behind. Some of the great trail names were my friend Carol, who I made. Her trail name is Best Western. Another one is Skittles. Then there's Bling Bling. There's Say It Again, Beer Man, Shady Rest, Tapey Toes, Bambi, Sticks, Beetle Bailey, Cheesy Turtle, and of course myself, Diddly. I did have an emergency contact device with me on the trail, and that was a sponsored item, thank God. They're very expensive, and that was a way that I was able to text messages to my husband every night as to my latitude and longitude, and that I was okay, and that I've stopped for the night. That was a really important piece of equipment to have with me. If it wasn't sponsored, I would have invested in it anyway. So 5.5 months of fun, of fear, of gross food, of exciting adventures and accomplishments and illnesses and injuries. I did walk into Canada on September 14th and made it home to my family at that time. I feel that the trail benefited me in so many ways, and some were so surprising. A lot of people said, how'd you leave your husband that long? And I had some husbands say, I wouldn't let my wife go that long. But the truth is, the absence did make our hearts grow fonder. We've been married 30 years, and I can see a lot of you in this group have probably been married or known people who've been married that long too. If we can't take 6 months apart and come back together feeling even more connected than we did, then something's not quite right. I'm telling you that 1 week, do it. That was fun. But beyond 1 week, it was so hard. My husband was my greatest supporter, cheerleader, and encourager along the way when times got tough. When I got back, I did go through post-trail depression. It's a real thing. Your feet just want to keep moving. Your body feels out of whack being in indoor air. I was overheated all the time because I was so used to being in cool mountain air through all of August and September as the temperatures dropped as I got closer to the border. But I worked through that. I didn't get professional guidance. I probably should have, but I did get right back to work. That's what happens when you're self-employed and you've taken 6 months off. You do have to get right back to work. But my family and my friends and my hiking mates throughout the community have all been wonderful in getting me back to normal. And so I really am through that now. It is only a temporary stage and looking forward to what's next. I have a list as long as your arm of long distance trails that I want to do, but I'm starting with the Bruce Trail this spring. I tried this August. I got injured on day 6, tore my meniscus, and had to get off the trail, but hoping I'll be healed enough to try it again next year. I hope to continue speaking to groups like yourself, inspiring people to get up, get outside, get healthy, get happy in the outdoors. And I would really like to go back and finish that part of the Pacific Crest Trail that I missed last time I was there. In conclusion, I have another quote for you from John Muir. He said, I think of him as saying it now. It's like when you read somebody, you don't think of them as gone. I don't anyway. He said that climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees. The winds will blow their freshness into you and the storms their energy, while cares will drop away from you like the leaves of autumn. I feel called to the outdoors every single day of my life. No matter the trail, the road, or the weather, I believe there is God's beauty to be found everywhere in nature. For me, it feeds my soul. It clears away tension and self-doubt and fills me with confidence, wonder, and gratitude. It keeps me happy and healthy and strong. And I really do encourage you all to do the same. So now I would like to go back to sharing my screen with you and present you with a preview of my hike, hiking home for shelter from Mexico to Canada. So just give me a moment to find the right, oh, whoops, first I have to share my screen, right? Okay, share. Now, hang on. Martin, if you could unmute again, please, and just tell me how to, what was that I have to click on to make sure they hear the sound, okay?
When you have the sharing screen open, in the bottom left corner is a little toggle box.
Yes.
It needs to be selected so that we can hear the sound that comes from the video you want to play.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'll start it again. Share screen. Share computer sound, correct?
That's the one.
Okay, share. There we go. Now, please stand by, everybody. Bear with me. I'm a hiker, not an IT specialist. So here we go. Nope. I had it open. Just need to minimize. Oh, take that. Here we go. I'm not sure how to get rid of. There we go. All right, here we go.
I just crossed that all alone. It was scary, really. It's not that dangerous. Perfect for a little refreshment. Yay! I just saw my second rattlesnake. Okay, this one was not nearly as passive as the last one. He was, again, stretched across the trail, but as soon as I came around the bend, he starts rattling and going across the trail and down into the bush beside the trail. But then he stopped in the bush and curled and kept rattling. Like, I can't do the sound. And I'm like, but I have to get past that bush and you're rattling. Okay, the fact that you're down in the bush, can you like spring at me from the bush? Maybe it can, I don't know if it can. Anyway, it kept rattling and rattling and rattling, so I tiptoed, ran past the bush, and he kept rattling behind me. Have walked 500 miles and I will, walk 2,500 more, no, 2,000 more, just to raise some funds for women and children who are abused and have to walk out their door to a shelter. Everybody, donate to Hiking Home for Shelter. Song slow. Donate to Hiking Home for Shelter. tinyurl.com/hiking home for shelter. Donate today. Okay.
Well, we're right here.
problem.
Safely. Here goes Diddley. Use your steps carefully. And I was freezing, my toes are red. Hey! Hey! This way! She's gonna make it. She's strong. That was my scariest part right in there. For some reason I got dizzy. The water made me dizzy. The Diddley, she's like a cat. 2 more steps. 2 more steps. Almost out.
Oh, thank you, Jesus!
Yeah, baby!
The hills are alive.
Oh, I gotta hug the Canadian side. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. Oh, yay. Oh, Canada, I love you forever. Okay, so finally I can announce it. We raised since last September to this September for shelters across Canada, and in my local shelter, Collingwood, my friend's house is going to get over $25,000.
Oh, yeah!
Thank you to everybody who contributed, especially everybody. And all the other thank yous will come later. For now, where is it? We gotta celebrate. Okay. So
Wow.
that is it. And I just want to say that I've processed this over the last year. Well, it's been a year now, and full circle, I've created a new hiking group called healthyhiker.ca. And if anybody would like to join that, you can find it on Facebook. The healthyhiker.ca is a Facebook group, and I did the .ca because there's another Healthy Hiker in the States, and there's a website to come, and I want to offer hiking leadership services and assistance to those who just need to get up and get out, but they need somebody to help them. So that is it for what I have to present to you. I would love to answer your questions if you have any now, so just feel free to unmute and ask away. Unless you have a different system.
I need to jump in first with a question, if I may.
Sure.
The trail, you know, some of the pictures you had told me the story that the trail is nothing other than a random guy walking across a snowfield. Who maintains this, and what kind of maps do you get to actually know where you're going?
Yes, well, it's very similar. Just as we all know the Bruce Trail in our community, everyone who lives up and down the West Coast knows the Pacific Crest Trail. And it is divided into sections, like we have the Niagara section, Iroquois section, Blue Mountain section. There are sections A, B, C, D, and each of those lettered sections is maintained by a group of volunteers. And there's a professional crew that goes into, because it's mountainous, so the professional crew may have to heli drop in to blast a rock fall, for instance. They may have to hike in for several days to break, saw up some logs after trees fall on the trail. So it's a combination of volunteers and professional maintenance crew that maintains it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Please, if you want to ask your question, I forgot to say this, you can, probably the easiest way, since we're a small group, is just unmute your line and then fire away.
Yes, please.
Oh, there was one question coming from TP via chat. How many pairs of shoes?
4 pairs of shoes. I started off with a very light trail shoe, but I found at my age, the more senior the hiker I encountered, the more common this was, that my feet were just killing me. And it's normal to have painful feet anyway, but the older the hiker, the more arch pain they were having. And eventually, I switched to a hiking boot, a good old Ontario Hiker Keens boot, up the ankle with a nice thick sole, and I had arches in all of my shoes that helped minimize, well, didn't minimize it, but helped to control the foot pain as well. Yeah, you literally do wear them out. You were asking about the trail looking random, Martin. There is, just like we have for the Bruce Trail, there are paper maps that you can get, but when you're counting grams, who wants to carry a map? So there's an app, and you follow the app, and there is signage along the trail. But of course, there are side trails as well, trails that lead off to other trails, trails that lead off to road access, and there are fire breaks. That's something I haven't really hiked high altitude so much in Canada, but they have fire breaks, which makes you think it might be a trail, but it's not. Pardon me, it's just a fire break so that if there is a forest fire, hopefully it'll stop from spreading to the rest of the forest by way of this strip that's sort of shaved through the forest. And it can be confusing. It can look like a path, but it's not. It's just a fire break. But we followed the app and the signs.
Barbara Reynolds, you unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, actually, I was just going to, I don't know if Linda, if you noticed a note, we have another guest online with us here today, and that's Natalia Mihai, who just finished Bruce end to end that both Linda and I
Where is
helped.
she? I'm looking.
I
to
think
see
she's
her.
still on here.
Natalia,
Yeah,
are you there? Natalia, unmute.
She doesn't have a microphone.
Oh, if you can see me. Hi. So the reason I'm so excited to hear that she's online, that's amazing, Barb. I'm sure you're the trail angel who connected her to this. She is a very special woman who hiked recently, thru-hiked the Bruce Trail, and Barb Reynolds and I both trail angeled Natalia and helping her get to and from the trail, and we hosted her in our homes. And Natalia's different though. I see myself as a long distance hiker now. She can't correct me, so I'm going to speak for her. She's a pilgrim, and she walks spiritual journeys. And this was the first sort of hiking type of pilgrimage she's gone on, more so than the walking kind where there are pilgrim hosts all along the way. And the Bruce Trail was really, really tough for her. And she reached out on the Bruce Trail site and got in touch with trail angels, and by the grace of God, made it happen without any camping supplies or anything. So that's Natalia's story. She has a book.
She's going to have a book.
Well, no, she has a book about other pilgrim experience.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
But that's lovely to see.
Enjoying reading it. Wonderful little stories.
Yes. So,
But
are there
an
any
amazing
other
feat you did,
questions?
Linda. And I'm glad to say that I was on board right from the start when you were preparing and doing some of our.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we
Are you
lost her.
frozen, Barb? Oh, I think she's
The
frozen.
wonders of the internet don't always work.
We lost her.
Yeah.
But yeah, Barb was definitely one of my staunch supporters from the beginning and all the way through, and I deeply appreciate that.
All right, Anne, if I may pass back to you.
Diddley, what a trooper.
Super trooper.
Do people call you Diddley sometimes?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do answer to it. Yeah. Well, my trail partner, Best Western, I call her BW and she calls me Dids. And Natalia now, who also has her own trail name because she's a fellow hiker, she calls me Diddley as well. On the trail. Outside the trail, it feels weird to be called. It's like when I was a teacher, I was Miss Murphy, but to be called Miss Murphy outside of school felt odd.
Yeah.
But, so Diddley on trail, absolutely.
And well, anyway, Linda, thank you for that tremendous talk. You're a real trooper. I don't know how you did it, but you did it, and congratulations. And we want to present you with this honorarium.
Oh,
I don't know what.
well, thank